I went by your house, what a big mistake. But for a while I thought that I wouldn't break. I need something else to clear my head. Someone to tell me how to live instead. Just open your eyes and take my advice. Stop rolling the dice and just compromise. It's the chance of your life. Okay, try to be brave. You have so much to save. Take control of your own life. Right now, every mistake makes you feel like a fake. Take control of your own life. Without any thought, I keep moving on. I don't even care if my soul is gone. So many words that I should have said. Not concerned about how to live instead. Just open your eyes and take my advice. Stop rolling the dice and just compromise. It's the chance of your life. Okay, try to be brave. You have so much to save. Take control of your own life. Right now, every mistake makes you feel like a fake. Take control of your own life. Nothing in life is good. Tired and beside. feel better on the weekend. Give my life a better meaning. Let me stay where I'm in phase. I feel better on the weekend. I feel better on the weekend. Give my life a better meaning. Let me stay where I'm in phase. I feel better on the
Welcome to Cyber Threat Intel, your go-to source for the latest updates, news, and insights on cyber threats. Our goal is to arm you with the knowledge to protect yourself in the digital age, whether you're a cybersecurity professional or just curious about the threats lurking in the digital shadows. Make sure to subscribe now on YouTube or your favorite podcast listening platform to join us on the front lines of cybersecurity, because in the world of cyber threats, knowledge is power. Hey, welcome to Cyber Threat Intel. I'm your host, John Good. This is episode number 21. It is Monday, April 22nd, 2024. Glad to have you here. Glad to have you tuning in, watching the replay, wherever you're watching the show and getting your content from. Love having people obviously hop on the live stream and join us as we're doing it live. But either way, if you're watching the replay, that's great too. Still a great way to get awesome information. If you're new to the show and this is your first time that you're watching the show or stumbling upon the show, typically what we do is we give people a few minutes to tune in, hop on the stream, grab a snack, grab a drink, anything like that that you need to get you through the show. And then after a few minutes and going through some show notes, we will kick off the rest of the content with the articles and the things to be watching. So with that being said, depending on where you're finding the show, right? There's a bunch of different ways that you can find us. but we offer a few different ways. So first of all, the live stream on YouTube, on the John Good Cyber YouTube channel. That's probably the best way to find us because we'll always be there. That's kind of our home base. Also on the John Good Cyber Twitter or X account, the John Good Cyber Facebook page, and the John Good Cyber LinkedIn profile. So my profile on LinkedIn. That's if you want to watch the on-demand replay. If you want to tune into the live stream as we're actually doing it, those are the best ways to do that for sure. Or you can listen to the audio only format. So if you just go to your favorite podcasting platform, Spotify, iTunes, whatever, right? Like there's a whole bunch of them. Just go on there, search for Cyber Threat Intel, and you'll be able to find the audio only version of the show as well. Or you can go to cyberthreatintel.com and you can find all the platforms that we're on there as well. And it's all listed out there, just direct links to that. And that makes it a little bit easier. But you can also find the article feed on cyberthreatintel.com if you want to see the articles that we're covering or other articles that we've added that are not necessarily covered in the show. It's a really great resource to utilize as well. So highly recommend doing that as well. Now, if you have professional certifications, something like the CISSP, Security Plus, whatever, right? Again, there's a whole bunch of those certifications out there. Typically, they require ongoing continuing education or watching webinars, attending classes, things like that. But did you know you can claim every one of these shows for half a CPE towards maintaining those certifications? So it's a free way to maintain those certifications. You don't have to run out and spend a bunch of money on training or paid webinars or anything like that. You get these shows and this content for free, and then you can just claim it as half a CPE every time you tune in towards those certifications. So maintain them for free. I don't know why you wouldn't do that, right? Take advantage of that free offer and that free ability to maintain those certifications. You know what it's like to wait till the very end of the year? And that is a huge struggle. So don't do that with this show 4 times a week over the course of a year. You're obviously going to get there really quick. So make sure that you do that after every show and claim that credit for that. So 2 credits a week, right? That's pretty valuable. Let's see here. What else? Also, make sure to grab your Cyber Threat Intel merch. There's a link in the description. So if you want to grab some mugs or some shirts, anything like that to help support the show, we obviously always appreciate that as well. So with that being said, there are some more people that are hopping on the live stream here. So we'll give people a few more minutes. And while people are hopping on the live stream, we'll go ahead and we'll flip over and talk about our sponsor for this episode, Cyber Training Pro. And I'll see you on the other side. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cyber Training Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. CybertrainingPro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today. All right, thanks to Cyber Training Pro. We do love our sponsors. If you didn't know, our sponsors help make all this content possible and make it possible to give to you for free. So they're a huge contributor to our ability to create content ongoing and to give this content out to you for free. So we appreciate it. We also encourage you to check out our sponsors and let them know that you appreciate it as well. If you're a company and you're looking to sponsor content, so you want to kick off that conversation, check out the description because there is more information about how you can kick that conversation off and how you can get in touch with us to sponsor content. So definitely do that. Now, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and flip on over my screen here and we'll kick off the articles here. All right, so first article here, how attackers can own a business without touching the endpoint. Attackers are increasingly making use of networkless attack techniques targeting cloud apps and identities. Here's how attackers can and are compromising organizations without ever needing to touch the endpoint or conventional network systems and services. So it goes on to talk about most organizations today are using tens to hundreds of SaaS applications across business functions. We know this, right? We see companies going into the cloud and continuing to expand into the cloud. Some are entirely SaaS native with no traditional network to speak of, but most have adopted a hybrid model with a mixture of on-premise cloud and SaaS services forming the backbone of business applications used. So we've seen this, right? Like we see smaller organizations, medium-sized organizations, even large-sized organizations, right, utilizing the cloud. But then we do see those medium and smaller-sized organizations a lot of times where they are just completely deploying things to the cloud or completely utilizing SaaS services as their kind of network, as it were, right? Like if they were using Office 365, maybe they don't have a stack of Cisco gear, right? Or a stack of networking gear with like a firewall and those kinds of traditional things. So this is pretty standard, for what's going on today. Definitely that does open the door for some different challenges, right? There are different challenges with cloud versus having a traditional network or traditional deployment model, if it were. Right? Cloud and SaaS apps are designed to be interconnected. We know this, right? They're designed to be accessible on the go, functioning like the closed networks of internal business applications you might have used in the past. The vehicle for this interconnectedness is identity, right? So some of these applications, they do connect with each other. A lot of times we'll see organizations use an identity provider, something like Okta or an SSO solution, and then you log in with those credentials, and then you kind of have access to everything, right? That's how SSO works. The most basic form of identity is a user account created for services you sign up for with a username, email, and password. To reduce the risk of account takeover and complexity of managing an ever-increasing number of accounts, organizations are using the services of identity providers, IDPs, to centralize access to apps within a single platform and identity using protocols like single sign-on, SSO, and OAuth to manage authentication and authorization respectively. So basically just like what I said, right? Where you join a company, you're given one set of credentials, right? Or you have a username and password. It's just one set of things that you have to remember. You don't have to remember 50,000 usernames and passwords like the times of the past, right? Where you'd have all these different usernames and passwords, and ideally you would have different passwords, right? But you would have to manage all those credentials, write them down, whatever the case is, right? So instead of that, how this works is you're given one set of credentials, you just have to maintain those credentials, and then behind the scenes, you are granted access to certain applications or certain services through that provider or through that identity management system, identity access management system, right? Or SSO solution, identity provider, whichever term you want to use, right? And it makes the whole process easier to manage, right? To manage, to use, all those kinds of things. Because think of this, as far as a business is concerned, right? Somebody who's administering all this, they have basically one system where they have to make sure this is all connected. So then when you come on board, you're given access to all the stuff that you need access to. When you leave the company, we disable it in that identity provider so that single source, and then ideally that kind of distributes out and disables all your access across all these different organizations. In effect, and this article says, in effect, this creates multiple identities tied to a single account, right? Which can introduce a lot of confusion and complexity. For example, just because an IDP admin deletes that account doesn't mean the app account can't then be accessed by using one of the other login methods that's been created. This can make it hard to know what apps are in use and what identities exist in the organization. So keep that in mind, right? Like if there is an ability to create, for instance, a local logon, right? So you have your SSO login and that is maintained by the organization, but then you're able to somehow have a local login ability as well. How is that maintained, right? Like how is that offboarded or managed or controlled to make sure that your user bases are not having these multiple logins, especially if they leave the company, right? If they leave the company, that's like probably the worst case scenario. But certainly you have things like privilege creep and these access creep and all these different things where your access changes or your needs of your role change and access is either granted or removed. And instead of doing that, eventually you just have a whole bunch of access. That's kind of 101 as far as access management. So in practice, it's possible to end up with a combination of the following. So it gives a bunch of different options here or things that can happen. So identity providers, typically 3 per organization on average. Apps acting as an SSO platform for connected apps. SaaS apps using different authentication and authorization protocols. SaaS apps with a local username and password, credentials and secrets stored in password manager, and authenticator apps, which can be in browsers, on local OS, and third-party apps. So essentially the idea here is you've got to get a hold of and control of your identities, right? Of your user access. You can't just deploy it and give people access and kind of just go about, go on with your day. You have to make sure that these are managed and that you are accounting for the entire life cycle of those users and their access. Very important. There are lots of companies that will get breached because they don't have a good handle on this stuff, right? Even if it's not your user that is breaching the system or doing something bad, right? Maybe they have a local account or ability to log in locally and then somebody breaches that account that way, right? There are all kinds of things that can happen. And that is certainly a concern as you get more connected and more deployed into the cloud. Next article here. Researchers find dozens of fake EasyPass toll websites after FBI warning. No! And that is a new sound effect that we just added as well. I know we talked about that on a few shows ago, so just throwing that out there. Article says cybersecurity researchers have found almost 30 phishing websites spoofing the electronic toll collection service EasyPass following an FBI warning last week. We talked about this in an episode last week. The FBI said in an alert that since early March, the Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3, has received over 2,000 complaints reporting smishing texts impersonating roll toll collection services from at least 3 states. So they were saying, I think it was like, you owe $12.95 or you're going to get fined like $500. I think that's what the numbers were. It was crazy, right? The messages use a state toll service name and say the victim has an outstanding balance on their account, right? To avoid a late fee, which is like the $500 or whatever it was, the texts say victims need to visit a website to settle the balance. The sites are hacker controlled. So they're getting these victims to go to these websites and do these things. Texts are largely the same for victims in each state, aside from the link that it asks people to click on, all of which are designed to impersonate the state's toll service name, according to the FBI. The FBI added that the phone numbers appear to change between states. So they're trying to obfuscate these attacks and try to disconnect them a little bit from each other so they don't appear to be the same attackers or kind of working together in the same techniques. There's a quote here. It says, the domains identified during our investigation indicate the campaign likely started in early to mid-February with the threat actors representing themselves as a toll collection authority for the state of New York, said Austin Northcutt, solutions engineer at Domain Tools. So, I mean, this is still just an interesting kind of attack, especially using something like smishing. But we see these kinds of things a lot, right? Going after people who are susceptible, really, to these kinds of attacks and hoping, kind of in mass scale, that people are going to click these links, they're going to pay these fees, right? I mean, if you have $500 a pop and you get, let's say, just even 2,000 people doing it, I mean, that's a pretty decent payday, right? For something that's really not that sophisticated. Obviously, if you get a lot more, that's even better as an attacker, and you're just getting more money to fund your evil doings, right? But we see people taking advantage of these legitimate kinds of things like toll services, or during the last couple of years, especially with COVID-19, there was a lot of scams and things like that associated to that. We see a lot of tax frauds or tax scams that go on every year, right? These are all common things that affect a lot of people, and typically, a lot of these people aren't necessarily tech savvy, right? Especially the ones that fall for it. These are just kind of general purpose things, right? If it was something around, let's say, like iCloud or something like that, Dropbox, then it would be a little bit different, right? Because the people that are using that, the demographic, is much more technically savvy and maybe not as likely to follow through or to click on some of this stuff. If this happens to your employees, right? If you're an employee of, say, the toll collection service or the IRS or something like that, then obviously you need to be concerned about that. A lot of this, though, a lot of times comes down to user education, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing to alert your employees of something happening like this, right? If you know this could impact your employees, right? If you know a bunch of your employees have to go through the toll service or something like that, maybe letting them know isn't a bad idea, right? But a lot of this, especially this attack specifically, is definitely targeted more towards the general population than maybe like the enterprise population, right? All right, let's keep moving here. UK cyber agency NCSC announces Richard Horne as its next chief executive. And also, too, we are going to have a brief after show after this. I'll hang around for a few minutes. So if you're interested in hanging out for the after show, you have some questions you want to ask, definitely make sure to hang out for that. Britain's National Cybersecurity Centre, the NCSC, has announced that Richard Horne will become the next CEO later this year. Horne, who has a PhD from Royal Holloway, University of London, in mathematics and cryptography, his thesis being On Point Weighted Designs, is the agency's third permanent chief executive and the first person to lead the NCSC with any formal academic training in cybersecurity. So that is interesting to see kind of this shift of who is taking the reins or who is taking control of an organization like this, right? This is kind of the shift in the industry or in the professional world, is that we are starting to get people that have formal training in cybersecurity or that are not transitioning maybe right away into a cybersecurity role. We saw that a lot kind of initially as cybersecurity became a bigger thing or more of a hot topic, is you don't necessarily have people that are trained up on it. So you have to put somebody in that role to kind of lead the way or to lead the initiatives. But now we're getting people that are educated in that. So that's good to see. Horne is currently the head of accountancy and professional services firm PwC UK's cybersecurity practice, prior to which he was the managing director of cybersecurity for Barclays Bank. So, I mean, definitely, definitely experienced, right? That's a pretty good background for sure to be taking over. The quote here: he brings with him a wealth of experience working with major companies and organizations to help them understand and manage their cybersecurity and respond to incidents when they occur. Richard's experience will ensure the NCSC continues to drive cybersecurity up the boardroom agenda and develop its world-leading partnerships to address the cybersecurity threats that the UK faces, said Keith Butler. I think that is going to be an ongoing battle, right, for any organization. It doesn't matter if it's in the UK, the government, whatever, right? A public company, private company, Google, whatever, right? Whatever. But this idea of really driving cybersecurity initiatives to as high as the boardroom, right? We've seen this a lot and kind of some complaints out there as far as cybersecurity not having as much authority as maybe necessary to pull some of this stuff off or to drive some of these initiatives at a very high level, right? We've had a lot of discussions about this before on this channel, on other forums, But basically the idea that companies are, hiring managers or hiring directors and those kinds of levels, but maybe not somebody at the very top, right? They have to report through a few levels in the organization or in the organizational structure to get their initiatives to the top. And then because of that, right, sometimes those initiatives don't always make it to the top. They're not always prioritized based on other things. And that's because of the authority of these positions a lot of times. So that is definitely something that's going to continue to be an uphill battle, I think, for cybersecurity people for a while, right? Like that's not going away next year for sure. But I do think overall things are starting to kind of get better than they have been, right? But again, it's organizationally dependent, industry dependent, because there are organizations that do it really well and there's organizations that do it terribly. There's industries that have a lot of emphasis on security. There's industries that have zero emphasis on security. So there's a lot of differences still out there as far as how important cybersecurity is, and how much influence cybersecurity should have on an organization. All right, next article here. MITRE was breached through Avanti zero-day vulnerabilities. No! That's not good. MITRE Corporation, a nonprofit overseeing federally funded research, was breached by nation-state hackers in January through 2 zero-day vulnerabilities in products from IT vendor Avanti. So we talked about this last week. The company explained in a blog post on Friday that unidentified threat actors performed reconnaissance on its networks by exploiting one of its VPNs through 2 vulnerabilities in Avanti Connect Secure. And the 2 vulnerabilities, if you're curious, they're CVE 2023-46805 and CVE 2024-21887. MITRE CTO Charles Clancy said in a statement that the company discovered last week that its unclassified collaborative research and development network, where prototyping and other work is housed, was compromised by a foreign nation-state threat actor. That is certainly not good, especially when it is something like a research and development network or area of your network, right? Because what happens is a lot of companies, they will have their networks kind of broken up into different segments or different kind of groupings or areas. So there will be different kinds of work conducted in these different areas, right? Like if you have a research lab, it's not going to be in your main network area where everybody can access it. It's going to kind of be off, in a corner. but the key here is, though, being a research and development network, now an attacker may have, maybe a step ahead of you because they know what you're working on, right? They know what kind of research you're doing and what kinds of things you're doing, so they can look at that and think ahead as far as their tactics and strategize to kind of avoid what you're doing, right? That's always a challenge really with attackers in general, is that attackers in general are always kind of ahead of us as defenders. And that's always a challenge, right? Because attackers, they only have to be right once. We as defenders, we always have to be right, or the attackers get into our network. So it is a serious concern for sure. They compromised an Avanti Connect secure app appliance on the network perimeter in early January and moved laterally into our VMware infrastructure before the zero-day CVE was disclosed and reported, Clancy said. So if you've heard me talk about 0 days before, there's no real way to stop 0 days, right? Like ultimately, if it's a 0 day and it's a critical kind of thing, you can't really stop it. But what you can do is you can minimize the impact. You can do good cybersecurity hygiene kind of things, right? The critical controls, software inventories, hardware inventories, firewalls, segmentations of networks, zero trust, right? Like all of these things are good hygiene practices that if you do them, and the better that you do them, the more that you'll minimize a lot of these things from happening or how much impact they ultimately have. In the blog post, MITRE explained that the attackers used the Avanti vulnerabilities to move laterally by taking over a compromised administrator account. They used a combination of sophisticated backdoors and web shells to maintain persistence and harvest credentials. So that is always a concern when administrator accounts are taken over, when they're compromised, right? And that's why those accounts especially have to be minimized as far as what they can access, what they can do, where they can go. One of the things that you should do on a lot of administrator accounts is typically disable internet access, right? A lot of times you'll see organizations where admins will have multiple accounts. They'll have a privileged account where they do their high level privileged things or tasks. And then they'll have their normal user account where they're just doing their daily kind of stuff, their email, their internet browsing, all of those kinds of things, right? So you'll have that separation because these administrator accounts, depending on the level of privilege, right? But that can be catastrophic for your network, right? What if this administrator account has access to all your backups and then it gets compromised and then all the backups start getting deleted? That's going to be a really bad day. Like that's going to be a painful experience, and it's going to be a painful learning lesson of what not to have in your network, right? Especially in some of these large enterprise networks, that could be a serious, serious issue. So very good learning lesson. One that I hope you don't have to learn personally, but one that you should absolutely be aware of. All right, next article here. GitHub comments abused to push malware via Microsoft repo URLs. Have you heard about this? This is actually popping up a lot in the news lately, so this is definitely a valuable article here. GitHub flaw or possibly a design decision is being abused by threat actors to distribute malware using URLs associated with Microsoft repositories, making the files appear trustworthy. That sounds dangerous, right? While most of the malware activity has been based around the Microsoft GitHub URLs, this flaw, and it's in quotes, could be abused with any public repository on GitHub, allowing threat actors to create very convincing lures. Yesterday, McAfee released a report on a new Lua malware loader distributed through what appeared to be a legitimate Microsoft GitHub repository for the C++ library manager for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, known as VCPKG, and the STL library. The URLs for the malware installers shown below in the article clearly indicate that they belong to the Microsoft repo, but we could not find any reference to the files in the project's source code. And then they give the URLs. So one of the issues with getting software from other organizations or from other locations is the ability to trust that software or those packages, right? If you're getting it, and this kind of goes to supply chain, right? Supply chain security, surprise, surprise. This is another hot button that we talk about a lot. But who do you get your software from? Can you trust that software? What do their practices look like as far as managing that software and updating that software and maintaining that, right? All of those things matter. What happens when that vendor is compromised, right? What if that software package or library is compromised? Where does that sit in your network or what you're doing? These are all questions that you have to address and you have to answer as part of this, right? Because like in this example, right? Let's say that you're getting software from Microsoft. So we think a lot of times if we're getting it from Microsoft, it's probably going to be pretty secure. I mean, I guess in the latest with the latest news, probably not, right? We've learned that Microsoft is not as secure maybe as we thought, or didn't follow as secure practices as we thought. But that's kind of the sentiment that we've had over the last several years before all this latest news. It's that they're secure, right? So we don't expect that we're getting packages directly from them, from their URL, and that it's going to be compromised in some way. But apparently that's what's happening, right? So that is concerning. It says, when leaving a comment, a GitHub user can attach a file, archives, documents, etc., and it'll be uploaded to GitHub CDN and associated with a related project using a unique URL in the format provided. Instead of generating the URL after a comment is posted, GitHub automatically generates the download link after you add the file to an unsaved comment as shown below. So it generates this download link. This allows threat actors to attach their malware to any repository without them knowing. Even if you decide not to post the comment, right? So this is important. If you don't post the comment or delete it after it's posted, the files are not deleted from GitHub CDN and the download URLs continue to work forever. Okay, think about that, right? So you don't even have to post the comment for the file to go up. That's like even worse, right? Like that is even worse. If you discard the comment, it doesn't matter. That file remains forever. That's bad, right? Like that is not good at all. That is very poor sanitization, very poor coding practice, just bad, right? Like, oh boy. As the file's URL contains the name of the repository the comment was created in, and is almost every software company uses GitHub, which is true, right? Ton of people use GitHub, ton of companies. This flaw can allow threat actors to develop extraordinarily crafty and trustworthy lures. Because as an attacker, you can upload this file to a legitimate company's GitHub, and then when somebody goes to download said file, it's going to show a URL associated to that trusted company, right? Let's let that sink in for a second, because that is like, oh, that I'm sorry, GitHub. No! That is painful. That is not good. That is very dangerous. Maybe not necessarily from the company standpoint, right? But certainly from your customer standpoint, that can lead to loss of trust for GitHub, loss of trust for your customers that are using GitHub. That, man, that is painful, right? These are one of those things that you have to think about in your company, right? And Jeffrey Christian said, you got the dough meme. Yay. Yes, I got it. I know it took a few episodes, but we got there. So, all right. Looks like we had a super chat here. KG says, I've been interested in watching your live videos. Is this a cybersecurity channel or programming? You say a lot of good things. So all of my content is definitely cybersecurity focused, cybersecurity based, but a lot of things fall under cybersecurity, right? So we definitely touch on a lot of different things that are about cybersecurity, best practices. I try to give as much exposure and broad exposure as possible to all the things that we cover. So we'll cover a whole bunch of different things, but we won't, like with programming, we're not going to specifically just cover programming or anything like that. It's typically going to have some kind of cybersecurity focus. And thank you for the super chat, by the way.
Well, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. And then love from Pakistan. Welcome, welcome, welcome. HMG dude says, so what would be the solution since many people use GitHub? Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, as an end user, right, as a company that is using GitHub, there's not, like, you can't really affect the back end, right? This does say here though, and this is a good thing too that I didn't have highlighted, so I'll go ahead and highlight that. But it says restricting comments can significantly impact a project's development, and it will not allow users to report bugs or suggestions. So that could be one thing that you could do, right? Is disabling, and it says right here too. So temporarily disabling comments. So you could do that, right? And that would certainly help. But there's pros and cons to doing that, right? In an environment like GitHub, where you want people to submit comments, you want people, in a lot of cases, right? If you have an open source development project or repo or something, you want people to be able to contribute to that. That is one of those things where GitHub is very beneficial in that sense, right? Allowing people to kind of crowdsource development, right? Especially with open source projects, is allowing people to contribute, to make fixes, to submit bug fixes or submit bugs and all of those things, right? So this is something that GitHub is definitely going to have to fix, because yeah, that could be catastrophic for GitHub, right? Like that could, it's just, it goes against so much about what GitHub is about as far as what they offer, right? So if they can't fix it, and that is leading to long-term trust issues with customers that are using GitHub's customers that are using their products or their services. So normal enterprises, they're going to go other places, right? They're going to go to Bitbucket or something else where maybe that is not an issue, right? And that, yeah, I mean, these are the kind of issues that really could put a huge impact something like GitHub, a company like GitHub, significantly, right? For sure. No question about it. HMG Do says, thanks for input, a conversation I'll bring up to my team. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth noting, right? It's kind of one of those risk-based decisions, because you have to look at the risk, you have to analyze that risk, how that impacts your organization, your team, your development projects, and is that something that you're willing to accept? Are you willing to take some temporary measures? Or is that just kind of the final straw with GitHub, and you want to go look at another vendor or at least explore other vendors, right? These are definitely things that can make you want to at least explore other vendors and see what else is out there and see if it makes sense to go with somebody else, right? So yeah, it's, for GitHub, it's unfortunate, right? Like, because that can be a big deal, but certainly from a competition aspect, right, in the market with similar products, similar services, that can be a good thing, right? GitLab and all these other services that offer something similar, right? All right, good stuff, good conversations. New Redline Stealer variant disguised as game cheats using Lua bytecode for stealth. New information stealer has been found leveraging Lua bytecode for added stealth and sophistication, findings from McAfee Labs reveals. The cybersecurity firm has assessed it to be a variant of a known malware called Redline Stealer, owing to the fact that the command and control C2 server IP address has been previously identified as associated with the malware. The off-the-shelf malware is capable of harvesting information from cryptocurrency wallets, VPN software, and web browsers, such as saved credentials, autocomplete data, credit card information, and geolocations based on the victim's IP address. The infection sequence identified by McAfee abuses GitHub, right? Using two of the Microsoft's official repositories. So this is connected to that previous article. Official repositories for its implementation of the C++ standard library, the STL, and VCPKG, which are the two things that we mentioned, to host the malware-laden payload in the form of zip archives, right? So they are posting this malware as zip archives under the Microsoft URL. It's currently not known how the files came to be uploaded to the repository, but the technique is a sign that threat actors are weaponizing the trust associated with trustworthy repositories to distribute malware. The zip files are no longer available for download from the Microsoft repositories. So my guess is this article came out before that other article came to light, right? Because we do know, at least to some extent, how these repos are being affected, or how this malware is being uploaded and how it's being distributed under the Microsoft name, right? So, but this is a really good example, right, of what can happen, if you're able to compromise something, for instance, Microsoft GitHub page, right? And you're able to deliver malware or malicious things under a trusted name or trusted entity, right? Trusted enterprise. because there's this kind of sense of trust, right, with some of these companies, especially major companies, right? Google's, Microsoft's, Apple's, these mega companies. You kind of trust them, kind of don't, right? The non-trust is because of other things, but you do have a sense of trust towards these organizations that they're doing their due diligence for the software and for the things that they're putting out. But the issue is not even necessarily associated to Microsoft in this case, right? It's associated to GitHub, and these attackers are leveraging exploits and things that they can do on GitHub to appear to come from Microsoft to be downloaded by whoever that think it's legitimate software, right? So again, this comes down to trust and supply chain security and all of these different things, right, that have to be considered. And as a company, as an enterprise, if you're delivering software to people, these are things that you should consider, right? You have to think about your customers, your consumers, things that can affect them, things that can affect your company, and your whole distribution of whatever you're deploying or giving to people, selling to people, supply chain sales, and those kinds of things, because you don't want your customers to negatively be impacted. You don't want your business to be negatively impacted, right? And so if that means going with another supplier, another supply chain vendor, third-party vendor, maybe that makes sense, right? Just depends. You have to do the risk assessment for yourself and determine that. So really interesting situation here for sure. So with that being said, that is the last article for this episode. So again, this is Cyber Threat Intel. This is episode number 21. It's Monday, April 22nd, 2024, and I'm your host, John Good. So depending on where you are listening from, we appreciate you always listening, whether that's on the replay or if you're watching live or on the audio podcast, on an audio podcast, right? We're available in all those formats. Again, just a reminder, we're available for the live stream and on-demand replay on the John Good Cyber YouTube channel. And this episode is also on my LinkedIn profile, John Good Cyber, as well as John Good Cyber on Twitter or X, and the John Good Cyber page on Facebook. So on all those, you can find the live stream and the replay for future episodes too. So make sure you tune in for future episodes. Or if you want to listen to the audio only format, you can find us on all the popular podcast platforms. Just search for Cyber Threat Intel. You'll find us there. Or you can go to cyberthreatintel.com. Again, cyberthreatintel.com. And you'll be able to find all the platforms listed there as well as the article feed. So if you want to see the articles that we covered, see some other articles that we did not cover, then you can definitely check those out there as well, and definitely recommend that. If you're a company and you want to sponsor content, make sure to check out the description because there is more information about how you can sponsor content in there as well and kick off that conversation. So again, we love our sponsors, so definitely check that out. And with that being said, like I said, we are going to do an after show. I'll stick around for an after show for a little bit. So if you have some questions or anything like that you want to ask, then definitely stick around for that. But if not, appreciate you stopping by. Appreciate you listening to the content. And I will see you in the next one. See you later. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cyber Training Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. CybertrainingPro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today. smaller. Glad to see some people stuck around. Glad to have everybody on the live stream and on the after show. Always a good time. So, like I said before, you know, on a lot of these shows, or some of these episodes rather, we'll be having after shows. So definitely making that a habit to have these, and answering questions and things like that. Obviously, they're not going to be super extensive or super long for the after show, but good way to just kind of interact a little bit after the stream and hang out for a little bit. And yeah. Gregor Christian says, "Yay, after party." Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And then of course I got the different audio clips and stuff. So yeah, it took a little bit to get the Doe one, but I got it. It was necessary. It was on the list of things to do. So just had to make time for that to get it. So. Yeah, I mean, I think that is going to be like the go-to standard clip for the show. Like, honestly, probably we'll have to use it so many times that I'll like break the button. It's literally like, okay, here's an article, and it's go, and then there's another article. Go! You know, it's just like constantly, like I should just keep my finger on the button. And then every article is just automatically. Wish I could link it to my email and get your impressive resume and experience, but we're going with another candidate. Yeah. I mean, applying to jobs and getting interviews and everything like that is always such an interesting experience. One thing that people don't always account for, and then that goes for especially people that are giving advice on that stuff, is they don't always account for things like the psychological aspect of things, right? There are psychological things and the way that people think and like all this stuff that people just don't know about or people don't think about. I mean, I always talk about that stuff when I'm doing my coaching, because I definitely, I seem to know a lot more about that stuff than I guess people do, because there's just so many things that people don't think about, right? And you have to, right? Like if you want to stand out, if you want to attract employers, there's a lot of things that people don't talk about for that stuff. And it's unfortunate, but it can both help you if you do it, and it can hurt you if you don't know what to do. So yeah, yeah. But yeah, I totally get that. Applying to jobs and getting the rejection email is never fun. I've applied to a lot of jobs in cybersecurity over my time. Some have worked out, obviously. Some have not worked out. So it is, yeah. it's I think we all wish that we had more callbacks, but I would say certainly as I've gotten more experience and understand better of what employers are looking for, you start to get more callbacks, right? Especially like with my resume stuff. If you look at my resume video, that alone can boost people's callback rates, right? Because I've seen so many resumes of people that say that their resume is great or that they think it's amazing. And like, they ask me to review it and I have no choice but to give a bunch of feedback, right? Like, because there's a lot of things, even just with resumes that people do that are just not good, right? Like there's a lot of things. So I always tell people, like, just for resumes alone, go check out my video on YouTube where I literally go through my resume, and that's, you know, an older version at this point, because I think that video is 2 years old, maybe something like that. But I mean, all the information itself is still correct. Just like some of the content maybe that I have in my personal resume is, you know, it's changed, right? I have had different roles since that point. So it's a good question. Let's throw this up here. So do you think LinkedIn is a better place to look for potential jobs? A better place than like sites like Indeed or something like that? Is that what you're saying? Or just kind of like in general? I mean, all the different platforms for searching for jobs have their pros and cons for sure. And at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to the companies that are putting jobs on those sites, right? You have some of these platforms where it's almost like a redistribution channel, right? Like job got posted on one site, it just got repushed out to these other sites, or like these random companies that or like random sites that are full of like recruiting agencies that put up jobs on there. Those sites are awful. Like I would never go to those websites, never recommend those sites. I tell people to stick to sites like LinkedIn, Indeed, you know, those kind of very common sites, because those are the ones I've had the best luck on too, like personally. But LinkedIn is not bad, right? Like LinkedIn has come a long ways as far as the site in general, but definitely looking for jobs too. It can be helpful, right? Because then the benefit of LinkedIn too is that you can also directly connect with people that are either associated to that job posting, right? Because you can see who the like recruiter is or who posted the job or whatever. And so that can be beneficial. But you can also see a job and then go look for people within that company that you may know or have connections with or that are on that team. That's not always going to work out in your favor, because like even I have people that hit me up all the time in the jobs that I've had that are asking about certain jobs, and I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm not typically going to respond to those, right? Like, but I get hit up all the time. But, you know, you can at least build connections that way. So you can connect with those people. You can see if they're posting on like LinkedIn and doing those kinds of things, and then build up rapport that way. So that can be helpful for sure. But there are definitely, like, especially the skills sections on LinkedIn where like it shows you have these many skills connected or related to this job. I mean, there's a lot more analytical information that LinkedIn will give you towards jobs than other sites will, especially if you go with like the pro version. Is that what it's called? The paid version of LinkedIn, right? Because they have different tiers. The free version is not really that valuable. Frankly, you don't get a lot of information. You can't connect with a lot of people. Like, they're trying to push people into the paid version. So it's just the premium version, I guess is what it's called. But yeah, like to do much on LinkedIn, you really need the premium version. And it's not all that cheap too. So depending on what your budget is, that might be a kind of a limiting factor. Jeffrey says, yeah, I followed it, reworked it, networked with a few guys that I follow on Twitch, reworked it again, going to land somewhere, not sure where, hopefully on my feet. Yeah, I mean, your feet would be better than landing somewhere else, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's the thing with resumes. It is very much a results-driven activity, right? If you get calls for your resume, like when you submit it, you get calls for interviews. You know, depending on how many calls you get, you might not have to do a lot. Typically, I'm saying if you have like 75% callback rate, I probably wouldn't do anything. You know, but once you start getting into like the 50% callback rate or 25% to 50%, usually you need adjustments. You might need skills too, right? Like those are two common things that have to happen for that, or training or something, certifications, something for those jobs. If you're not getting a 25% callback rate, you probably have to do a revamp of your resume, right? And because if you have the skills, then it's like just a revamp of your resume because it's just not working. But more commonly, it's probably a revamp of your resume and you have to add skills, or you're applying to jobs that that you're just not qualified for. So all of those things can be present, and it's a larger conversation for sure, because there's just so much that goes into this stuff and actually being successful. Like when I apply to jobs, I mean, I'm probably not gonna say it on this stream, but I have a very typically a very high callback rate, right? Just because I think about the jobs I apply to, I work a lot on my resume to make sure it looks good. I work a lot on adding skills that are relevant to where I want to go and doing all those things. So yeah, I mean, just stick with it, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do. You have to continue to build your skills, continue to build your experience. You have to get work experience if you don't have any, right? Whether that's in help desk, IT, cybersecurity, whatever. But as you start to get that and you start to get further in your into your career, it becomes easier for sure, because then you have it, and then you're not fighting against people that are all in the same boat where they have like no experience, and it's very hard to distinguish between people. That's one of the hardest parts of being an entry-level candidate, is being able to distinguish yourself from other people. Because it's like, okay, if somebody says, go get Security Plus, go get the Network Plus, like go get these basic things, a ton of people can get those. There's almost no barrier to distinguish you between yourself and somebody else just with those things alone, right? So you have to do other things to stand out. As you get experience, that experience helps you to really stand out from other people, because other people aren't going to have the exact same experience as you. And so it's just going to be you're going to be a different candidate than other people. So it's a challenge, especially at the entry level, but that's why you have to be willing to do more and do the things that take effort to stand out. But you'll get there. Just keep doing the things. It's as long as you do the things that are, the correct things and the things that are going to help you stand out, then you'll get there for sure. So, all right. Well, this has been fun. I know we've had some people hanging around for the after show, which I always appreciate, and the people that are tuning in to the live stream as well, and all the other content that I have out there too. So love hanging out with everybody. And with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up for today. And I'll see you in the next one. See you later.